Hey everybody, if you're like me, you finished The Haunting of Bly Manor insanely confused and needing a drink.
I don't want it watered down. I want an actual bloody drink.
But have no fear. Okay, maybe some fear. It is a horror story.
It isn't. It's a love story.
We'll disregard that. Because in this video, we'll be going over the ending's true meaning and what I thought was the most complicated aspect of the show, how these ghosts actually work. And let me tell you, even the actors didn't know what was going on.
I would be honest if I said I'm not still a little confused.
Yeah, I don't know what the rules were. A lot of
So take a dip in the lake, make sure to like and subscribe because this video is sure to be
Perfectly splendid, perfectly splendid, perfectly splendid, perfectly splendid.
Okay, enough of that. Well, it is an ending explained, so why don't we start with the very last shot of the entire season. Here we have Carla Gugino's character sleeping as Dany's hand rests on her shoulder. We learn in this final episode that Carla plays older Jamie, the gardener at Bly Manor and Dany Clayton's love interest. In episode 1, she's simply credited as the storyteller, because if they called her older Jamie, it would give away one of the biggest twists of the season. Now you might notice older Jamie doesn't look like younger Jamie. That's partly because it would give away the twist, but also because the version of the story we see is the one where details have been changed.
So is it true? Which part?
Jamie, perhaps to keep people from ever visiting this mysterious manor, has altered just enough to keep the main details of the story intact, but allow for its characters to remain anonymous. She even says that Bly Manor isn't even the name of the actual home.
I expect if you were to fly to England, you would find no such place by that name.
Jamie's story bleeds into real life as we see her attend the wedding of a grown-up Flora who seems to have lost her British accent, if she ever had one in the first place. After all, remember that Jamie has changed some of the details. We do know she's older Flora by the credits. We also know from Owen that Miles and Flora lost most of their memories of Bly, and that's why Flora doesn't remember Jamie. We also see older versions of Miles and Owen and Henry. You may have also noticed a manor by a lake in the painting in the room where she tells the story. It's not Bly Manor, or maybe it is. Jamie has changed things in the story. It's up to us, the viewer, to decide. Perhaps what makes this ending hauntingly beautiful is Jamie's longing for Dany, who one day just simply vanished. But Dany and Jamie knew this day was coming. Right after leaving Bly, Jamie makes plans with Dany for Christmas, a few months away, but Dany is apprehensive. She's apprehensive because she doesn't know how long it will take for the spirit of Viola to take over her, the spirit she trapped within her. She calls this spirit the Beast of the Jungle, which is also the title of the final episode. Over the 6 or so years Jamie and Dany spent together after Bly, Viola slowly creeps in, starting to show up in reflections like on the front of their shop or on a water pitcher. It's when Dany wakes up one night, her hand almost wrapped around Jamie's neck, she realizes she's lost control. It's only a matter of time before Viola and her rage takes over. So she does the most difficult thing she can do to protect the person she loves. She leaves.
And she could not risk the most important thing. Her most important person. Not for one more day.
And it's important this line comes from the storyteller, or Jamie, because she understands why Dany did what she did. She's come to accept it, but at first she didn't. When Dany leaves, Jamie travels back to Bly in an attempt to reunite with her, even jumping into the lake and pleading for her to take her, just like Dany took the spirit of the Lady of the Lake earlier in the episode. But Dany doesn't take her.
And Dany wouldn't. Dany would never. In fact, no one would ever be taken again.
Dany has decided to end this cycle of pain, sacrificing being with her love to end this vicious cycle. But to understand how all this began, we must go to episode 8 and the origin of the Lady of the Lake in an episode titled The Romance of Certain Old Clothes, which happens to be a title of a Henry James short story, the author who also wrote The Turn of the Screw, of which this season is based. In fact, this season is based off multiple James stories, including The Jolly Corner, about a man haunted by his alter ego, just like Henry is in episode 6, which also has the same title. The story centers around Viola, who you may have caught Flora doing grave tracings of way back in episode 4, a stubborn woman inflicted by a disease simply known as the lung. Viola watched as a love affair bloomed between her sister and husband, and for 6 years she treated her sister dreadfully as her health waned. Viola's disease ultimately caused her sister to kill her, not out of mercy, but she had just had enough. Before her death, Viola makes her husband promise not to open her chest filled with jewels and dresses until their daughter Isabel is of age. It's to be her inheritance. But when the family finds themselves in dire financial straits, Perdita opens the chest only to be killed by Viola's ghost, a woman whose soul never made it to the afterlife after refusing to say her last rites. Not much is known how this transformation into a spirit happened. It's one of the show's main conceits it asks you to buy into. All we know is that her strong will, stubbornness, abandonment, refusal of God, and betrayal by her loved ones combine together to create what the show calls a, quote, gravity well, trapping those who die in its sphere.
Whole town's one big gravity well. It's easy to get stuck.
Arthur, Viola's husband, stumbles upon the dead body of Perdita and ends up throwing the cursed chest into the bottom of the lake. Years later, with the hopes of reuniting with her daughter Isabel, the Lady of the Lake goes through this same routine over and over again, up to the master bedroom and back to the lake again, killing anyone who gets in her way. That's why we see these mud tracks throughout the home, and why Miles and Flora, multiple times throughout the season, try to stop Dany from walking around the house when they know the lady is on the move. Take, for example, episode 1, where they lock Dany in the closet. This is a night the lady is out and about. Flora knows this because of the position of the doll. The dollhouse represents Bly Manor, and the dolls are all the humans and spirits in and around it. Dany finds the doll representing the Lady of the Lake underneath the dresser, and Flora tells her not to move it. That's because the dresser represents the lake. Whenever the lady is under the dresser, it's safe to move about. The night they locked Dany in the closet, Dany had almost tripped over it in the middle of the room, meaning it was making its way to the house. In episode 2, we'll see the doll is back under the dresser, and Miles and Flora are eager to play hide and seek since they know the lady isn't anywhere near the home. Every time the lady goes back to sleep, she forgets everything that happened, and this cycle repeats for centuries as she collects more souls. This includes the Plague Doctor when Bly was used as a quarantine home. You may have seen him lurking in the background in the first few episodes, or the little boy who was mistakenly taken by Viola as her daughter. But as the storyteller says, time takes all things, even the soul and our memories.
As her memories left her, so too her face.
That's what happens to the spirits at Bly over time. Their faces smooth over as if washed by time. That's why Peter is adamant to find a way to escape Bly so quickly.
Because this is what happens to everyone who dies here at Bly.
And anyone who dies at Bly Manor, whether by the lady's icy grip or otherwise, gets pulled into her gravity, their souls trapped on the grounds. This is what happened to Hannah Gross, who died after being pushed down the Bly well. She didn't die by the lady in the lake, but by Miles, who was controlled by Peter, but we'll get to that in a bit. Hannah has been a ghost the whole time Dany was at Bly. That's why we never see her eat or leave the grounds. Ghosts can't go beyond the property line, as that's the extent of the lady's gravitational pull. The thing is, Hannah doesn't know she's dead, and this is normal for new spirits. As Miles tells her, it takes a while for them to realize they're dead in the first place. He equates it to the cartoon character Wile E. Coyote running off a cliff, only falling after realizing the nature of his predicament. It's only until Hannah has shown her body lying at the bottom of the well does she know the truth, and those cracks that have been haunting her throughout the season are those of the stone inside the well. The beginning of the final episode sees Hannah in what Peter calls dream hopping. Think of it like a memory-infused dream. These are largely uncontrollable events, as we'll see almost all the ghosts thrust into different memories they can't stop, like Peter and his mother, or Miss Jessel and the night Peter asked her to come away with him to America. Some are good memories and some are bad. Peter is constantly dropped into a dream where he has to confront his mother, who ignored signs that his father was abusing him and who would later blackmail him into stealing items from the Wingraves to pay her off. He relives this hell over and over again, one of the main reasons he wants to get away from Bly and this vicious cycle. To add further pain, he loses the ability to touch and be with the love of his life, Rebecca Jessel, and so begins his quest to find a way to be with Rebecca forever and leave Bly once and for all. After revealing himself to Rebecca as a ghost, the two attempt ways to leave. Spirits at Bly have the ability to possess the living by touching them, but only for a short amount of time. This explains Miles peeping in on Dany, touching her hair seductively, having a smoke, and most importantly throwing Hannah down the well. It wasn't Miles who did this, it was Peter controlling him. Peter possesses Rebecca and sees if that might allow him to leave the grounds, but it doesn't work, or so that's what we're to believe. I'll get to more of that in a bit. Those those who are possessed have no recollection of what happened during the time they were controlled. That's why we have scenes like where Flora wakes up in the middle of the lawn having no idea how she got there. When someone is possessed, it's called being tucked away, because they are tucked away in a memory. Flora has a lot of these, like when she meets the boy with the unfinished face, or when she's given an acorn talisman from her mother. Peter and Rebecca want to be together, but he's dead and she's alive. The only way she can be with him and touch him is if he possesses her and she lives tucked away in his memory. But for Peter, that means he's alone.
She was safe, tucked away in a memory of them, where they could be together. And he was here, alone.
So as possessed Rebecca, he drowns her in the lake, leaving her body before she dies, where she comes back as a spirit. Technically, they are equals now, like he promised, but he never mentioned killing her to do so, but he tells her there's a way out and that she'll, quote, understand when she meets the others. Peter's next plan is far more nefarious. Essentially, it's to possess the bodies of Miles and Flora, tucking them away in what he calls their forever home, so they can live with the memory of their parents forever. This would allow Peter and Rebecca to grow up in the bodies of these kids, but more importantly, they'd be together and could leave Bly. But how come Peter couldn't leave Bly before as Rebecca? I actually think he could have left, but at the last minute left her body, knowing that if he did leave as her, they'd never truly be together.
It didn't work.
Like, look at his reaction. He's hiding something. Plus, he previously said every time he's tried to leave the property, he gets transported to where he died. He died in the manor, yet he's not transported there.
The moment I reach the edge of the property, I'm right back here. Inside, right on the spot with it.
The biggest factor, however, when it comes to controlling someone as a ghost is consent.
And so what we kind of came up with, it's all to do with consent. And so it's all to do with whether it's an actual verbal consent or it's an emotional consent, and that would be the rules.
Giving yourself fully to someone else allows you to enter them and control them forever.
You just need to decide that it's forever. Permanent.
That's where those lines, it's you, it's me, it's us, come into play. That verbal consent. These are the lines Rebecca says to Peter before he takes control of her, and the same lines Dany says to the Lady of the Lake before she's about to kill Flora. How Dany knew how to say these lines is kind of glossed over in the show.
In that critical moment, said what she said. Something she did not entirely understand, but something she felt. In her bones.
What Dany did was open herself up to the spirit, fully, a far more inviting place than trapped at the bottom of the lake in that dreary bedroom. And the moment that happened, all the other souls of the spirits were released. Peter, Rebecca, Hannah, and all the rest. Henry, who is briefly killed by the lady, is brought back to life by CPR. He'll take over as the children's guardian, a man who once wouldn't even set foot at Bly. He felt responsible for the death of his brother and sister-in-law in India, a trip they went on to rekindle their marriage after Henry had an affair with his brother's wife. Being at Bly is a reminder of all that, hence why he never came, but Henry's journey leads him to discover some things are more important. After all, Flora is his daughter. The final scene of Bly Manor is almost a repeat of the scene we saw in episode 1. Older Jamie prepares a bath, hoping to see the reflection of her long-lost love. She even leaves the door slightly open in the hopes she'll one day come to her. The song "O Willow Waly," which plays at the beginning of the show, has the line, "Singing O Willow Waly till my lover return to me," and it also happens to be a song from the 1961 Jack Clayton horror film The Innocents, which is also an adaptation of The Turn of the Screw. I guess we now know where Dany's last name came from. Dany's hand on Jamie's shoulder is open to interpretation. Is she actually there with her, or perhaps this is Jamie dreaming, her love comforting her, a symbol of her always watching over her. This video just scratched the surface of Bly Manor's mysteries, and I know there's a ton I wasn't able to cover, but if you have an idea for another video or just want to discuss what you thought of the show, leave a comment below. Thanks for watching, everyone. Make sure to like and subscribe. I'm always coming out with detailed breakdowns of your favorite films and TV shows. For more bad takes, follow me on Twitter and Instagram at ThinkStoryYT. Until next time, remember, Daddy loves you very much.